Next speaker and presentation are coming from Austria. Dr. Hans-Peter Stückler is head of the Criminal Strategy Office from Austria, and he will tell us now about the strategy development process. Please, you.
So, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. So far we discussed quite a lot how to do it. So unfortunately it's now up to me to show a little bit more the bureaucratic approach, how we in Austria, for example, develop a strategy, because this is really very vital to get the things done by the end of the day, and we call it transformation from an idea to action plans. I would also like to thank you for the great opportunity to give a presentation here. And even if time is flying, I'm quite a lucky guy because fortunately I'm from Austria and we are not facing the same threats like you face here in Estonia. Sorry for that. And but we in Austria, we usually don't reinvent the wheel, and I don't want to be wiser than you are, and I just want to give you some short impressions how we do it. So, going to this slide, I just want to draw your attention to this one. That, believe it or not, 9 soccer players in a football team usually don't know what is the aim of the match, and unfortunately they are more or less competing against their comrades and not against the opposing team. So probably this sounds familiar to you and to your organization. If not, it is familiar within our organization, and it's more or less the status quo. So just to give you a quick overview about the Austrian Minister of the Interior, so we are responsible for about 28,000 employees, and we have 9 regional commanders under the directive of the Minister of the Interior, respecting my boss, the Director General. But as I mentioned, we have 9 regional commanders. You can imagine these are 9 regional kingdoms. And so it's not quite easy to come up with a unique strategy development process. And the very bad situation is that so far in Austria, we don't have a lack of strategies. It's the other way around. We had too many strategies. We had a multitude of strategies. And by the end of the day, it was only a power play between the 9 regional kingdoms. Sorry, regional commanders. So, why strategy? I know it's a tricky situation for me right now because you're facing daily problems here, and especially in Estonia. But coming back to the presentation of my British colleague, I wholeheartedly agree to be aware of the threats. But this is one of the vital problems at the same time, because if you want to do a strategy, first of all, you should not overreact. As you can see on the left-hand side, that's how we act usually when we do some search for suspects. So, of course, there is a bank robbery. You can come up with a case study. And what we are doing, everybody is searching. We don't even know if usually we know it's a male or it's a female one, but that's all. We don't know any detailed information. And so we have exactly 0 minutes in planning, 45 minutes in execution, and so at least we need three colleagues who are doing the search. So we call this aimless activism, so probably this also sounds familiar to you. And the next one is, it's also very tricky, the routine. It's called business as usual, and we do some planning because we always do some planning, and then we go to the execution. And of course we don't need 3 colleagues, we only need 2, but this is the daily routine, and it's not as good as it could be. The aim should be, by the end of the day, that we put the strategy first. So I know it's tricky, especially coming back to the situation in Estonia now, and I'm not an expert in counterintelligence and whatever, but it's much easier to play the power play and say, okay, power play between the Minister of the Interior, the Minister of Defense, and say, okay, who is in charge? Are we all in charge? Who wants to go to the Prime Minister? Who has the right to inform him? Who does the public relation? Who goes to the media? But wouldn't it be much wiser to go one step back and come up with a task force or whatever, call it however you want, and to give the planning some time. And maybe if you do it in that way, I would say especially Estonia is already well prepared to the Russian threat, because if not, I would be really wondering, because this is nothing brand new. Maybe the actual threats are new, but there is an ongoing threat during the last decade, I would say so. And as you can see on the right-hand slide, on the right hand, the execution planning takes some time. It does, unfortunately. The execution is much faster, but that's the critical point for strategy. You only need one personnel. And by the end of the day, it's all about resources, especially in small countries like ours. As long as we had enough money, as long as we had enough personnel, we didn't take care about strategy. Nobody cares about strategies as long as there are enough resources. Now in Austria, for example, we are running out of military personnel. We have one thing for sure: we don't get more money from the budgetary side, and now it's time for strategy, unfortunately. So, as I mentioned already, in Austria we didn't have a lack of strategies. So we had strategies on the ministerial level, we had internal strategies, we had international strategies from Europol, Interpol, NATO, whatever. We had strategies on the regional level from the regional kingdoms. We had strategies for fighting border crime, organized crime, whatever. So unfortunately, we are very much focused on the internal side of the strategy development and not so much on the stakeholder side, which are our customers and which are, our primary customers. And so we are living in an embedded world, and that's why we have so-called independent strategies for fighting crime, especially the organized crime. I guess it's similar here in Estonia, and I don't want to stress this too much. But I promised you some insights in the Austrian strategy development, and I know there are some public ladies and gentlemen here, and I don't want to speak very bad about the Austrian situation, but we are not as good as we could be, especially in developing strategies. So, as the police force or as the criminal intelligence, we are quite good at the basic level, what we call the tactical level. So this is our core business since decades. So this, for historic reasons, we're quite good. We're talking about 24, 48 hours. We have all the quantitative parameters and all the short-term perspective. We are analysis-driven, we have great databases and so on. At the operational level, so let's say for the timeline for the next 6 months, we are also quite good in Austria. We have the relevant guidelines and master plans and so on, and this is okay. But when it's coming to the strategic level, so it becomes a tricky situation, because usually the strategic level is nothing which is relevant within the next 48 hours. So we are talking about a timeline from, let's say, approximately 5 years. And when you know that the Austrian top executives within the Austrian forces, criminal intelligence, military, whatever, are in charge for usually 5 years, and then they have to be their contract has to be renewed. You can imagine that not many of them could be interested in long-term solutions. They want to be re-elected, so 5 years is the maximum what they are talking when they are talking about strategic level. And it also has been mentioned the scenarios. Well, scenarios usually is like to say what it's not to say what happens in 5 years and the 15th of September in 2018 at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at street number whatever. So usually that's no lottery. When we are talking about scenarios, it's about the top 5 scenarios. But so far we have no clue what the scenarios are. We are reading some interesting books, we are doing some comparison, but we have no holistic scientific approach to identify these scenarios, unfortunately. So, to give you, not say a best practice, maybe a good practice, and it's not that the Austrian guys are so great, it's nothing brand new for all the scientists among us. I just want to stress the red line, because it's basically it's more of the same to the previous slide. We have here the short-term period. So in Austria, we are talking about 24, 48 hours, as you remember. Then we are coming to the midterm period. If you see the funnel, it's the timeline from about 6 months, and then it's the 5 years one. But this within the funnel, we already know somehow more or less quality and more or less quantity. But the tricky situation, I guess that's the same problem here in Estonia, from my personal point of view, we don't know what's outside the funnel, because therefore we have no figures, we have no statistics, because everything within the funnel is based on statistics. It's based on figures we already have and which we can do any exploration or whatever. So the challenge might be to know the unknown, and therefore that's no game. It's not to think about in a funny way. There are some quantitative and quality, I'd say, I'm sorry for the broken English, but at least there are some scientific measures, and we should do it, because this is what our especially external stakeholders, let's say, want to get from the Ministry of the Interior. So, is it brand new wine, or is it just old wine in new skins? So you know the saying that the only constant is the change. And when you see our findings, they are not so totally different probably to your findings here in Estonia. And the key message here is that the law enforcement agencies, the criminal intelligence services, or the intelligence service overall, simply have to take another step forward to reach the next level, because otherwise we would fight today's crime, today's terrorism with yesterday's methods and techniques. Once again, Austrian situation, so the short-term analysis is quite good. We are well prepared here. We are great. Are we really great? Especially we are great, I would say, in the short-term analysis. So for the midterm analysis and the development of the crime times, as mentioned, we are really good. But when it comes to the long-term analysis, again, our aim is to identify the top 5 magic factors of influence. This is especially to go one step forward, like we say, on an ice level with our counterparts, because this seems to be of vital interest for us and, of course, also for our stakeholders. So, in a nutshell, dealing with strategy development, is not an issue of dealing with fancy stuff. I know it. It's not the most fancy one. It's not the most interesting one in private life, but it's really necessary to make the organization fit for the future challenges. And please, ladies and gentlemen, bear in mind that this is not because we have plenty of resources. It's because we are running out of resources, and that's why it's necessary from our point of view. The question on the goals and purpose is not the if, it's but when is it coming. So this brings me to the last slide. I'm still in time, I'm fine. Don't worry, it's looking quite complicated, but usually it's no rocket science. It's just some kind of common sense. But the major benefit of this slide is just do it. You know this slogan from Nike, here it's the same. Strategy development is no rocket science. You just have to do it, and you should do it within a week. Usually it takes 1 year to come up with a proper strategy. Otherwise it wouldn't be a strategy development process. It would simply be reaction on daily needs or daily business. So just focus on that one, and you see the start usually is initiated by the Director General. Then it's the usual process. We go to the data collection and analysis. We go to the determination, because otherwise it would be only words and only papers. So that's our biggest problem so far. We stuck somewhere in the middle. We are not able to transform it to the operative forces, and that's the most important part, to identify the 5 top aims and targets, but it's even much more important to break them down to action plans, to concrete action plans which you can control and by the end of the day which you can implement. And well, you know, this looks great. You see on the right hand side, because I guess you will get these slides, who is responsible for doing it, what are the detailed techniques, what we are doing. So this is for further information if you're really interested in. I don't want to stress it too much. The red light is flashing, so just one last sentence. My final saying always is that the better is the enemy of the good. And so let me finish with these words. And once again, thank you very much. And if you're interested in any further details, please don't hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much.
Well, they say usually in management at least that you get what you measure. How do you measure the strategy process internally?
That's one of the trickiest questions. Thank you for that at the end. But it's not that tricky as it sounds at the first sight, because we have some of our core figures. We have our crime statistics, so we can easily measure if something works or if it doesn't work. Of course, there's not always a connotation. There's not always a relation between our measures and the results in the society. Unfortunately, we are working on that. But if you're coming up with a strategy following by this process, by the end of the day, you simply have simple working plans. And the key performance indicators are figures on the one hand side. These are the tricky ones, you're right. But on the other hand side, the key performance indicator are simply milestones. And this one you can easily measure and say, okay, we want to do some specific operations till that time, and we want to have so many warrants, for example. So this is usually a part of our, we call it, controlling process.
You referred to an issue that another speaker as well, like getting a political engagement behind the security issues. How do you do that? How do you get them engaged either on local municipality level or on a state government level?
Well, we as law enforcement officers, it's our obligation to inform our Minister of the Interior, and thanks to God, she's really a very wise woman, and usually she's listening to her experts, to her internal experts. But we are also aware of that there is sometimes a need of public actions just to go to the media and something like that. So I hope this covers your question somehow. Okay. So we advise the minister, but there is no guarantee that the advice reaches the minister every time.
Okay. Kas saalis on küsimusi? Kõik on selge. Thank you very much.